Hi everyone, thanks you for joining us again for yet another set of DIGI Talks. The two times, once we talked about the sea cables and the importance of cables for connectivity. The very last talk with it on the importance of open source, and I think it's quite a nice coherence, today's talk that we're having with my guest, Alex Wong. In a way also on connectivity issues, but with specific on connectivity of schools. Alex will present us the GIGA initiatives, but we will also talk a bit on the role of ITU, the role of ITU for International Geneva, but also for the world, so to say. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much, Alex, for making the trip from Geneva here to Bern on this quite cold day today already. Alex, just to present him, he's a senior advisor in the executive office of the ITU, but he is also the lead of the GIGA initiatives. And as I said, that's the two actually main points we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. Alex, it's not the first time that we meet, and I think GIGA has made quite an advancement since 2019, I understand. But could you probably, before going into GIGA, briefly just present to the audience, because there might be some people who are not so familiar with ITU. What is ITU? What does ITU do? And then we deep more on GIGA.
Yes. Yeah, very good. It's always great to start with who is the ITU, because we do find many people aren't familiar as much. So ITU is one of the UN's agencies. In fact, it's the oldest UN agency. Oh. And we're really proud that next year is the 160th anniversary of the founding of the ITU in Geneva. So Switzerland is the ITU's home. Our role as the specialized agency is on ICTs, mm-hmm. and we are now call ourselves the UN's digital agency. Okay. So our core mission has two parts, as mandated by the member states. That is promoting universal, meaningful connectivity, mm-hmm. closing the digital divide. And number two, promoting sustainable digital transformation. So it's a very broad mandate, but that's the mandate of the ITU. Most probably people in the audience might be familiar more of the ITU because of its role in standards mm-hmm. and regulation. And mm-hmm. that indeed is part of the core objective and mission of the ITU, is to promote the international standards work, and also to play the role of the world's regulator, I guess, if you call that, on ICTs. We also have a very strong development mission as well, which is closing the digital divide. Yeah. So together, you have those three core departments that focus on regulation, standards, and development. And then, of course, it's coordinated overall by our Secretary General, Doreen Bogdan-Martin. Yeah.
And connectivity, why is that so important? I mean, we talked about a bit, and I think colleagues we had like connectivity cuts. That's why we talked about sea cables. Yes. But maybe in general, why is it actually so important, and also for development?
Yeah. Well, for the ITU and for the member states, we believe that closing the digital divide is essential. It's one of the core global development focuses that we have to have. Everyone should be connected and have the same opportunities and choices and benefits that all of us enjoy on a daily basis. There are still 2.6 billion people that mm-hmm. don't have regular, meaningful connectivity. So our job at the ITU is to give those people connectivity, and also give that connectivity in a meaningful way, meaning that it's of sufficient capacity, that they can also access it through their own relevant content, but also that it's safe and secure. Mm-hmm. And we believe that if we can achieve connectivity and if we can make the advances, it also has a direct impact on the Sustainable Development Goals. So the SDGs, I think most of the audience knows, we are very far behind on achieving the goals by 2030. We've done some work that illustrates that around 70% of the indicators that are used to measure progress on the SDGs have a direct or indirect digital component. In other words, if you can use digital, you can accelerate progress on that indicator. So we also believe that digital connectivity and digital in general has a critical role if we're going to game change the progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
Right. And is this also like the key thought about why you funded or co-funded actually together with UNICEF, right? The GIGA initiative, I believe.
Yes.
But why I think you, if I'm not mistaken, GIGA is mainly focusing on schools,
Yes.
and maybe you can elaborate a bit on what brought you to join with UNICEF. I think
Yes.
I'm not so sure how many other initiatives there are between two UN organizations, and what were the reflections on also why focusing on schools as opposite, for instance, on, I don't know, farmers or hospitals or other things that could also be connected.
Well, we are going to start focusing on hospitals.
I thought so.
So, as all great partnerships begin, it's leadership. And the GIGA initiative took place on the sidelines of a discussion at our Broadband Commission meeting between, at the time, our director of the BDT, the Development Bureau of the ITU, Doreen Bogdan-Martin, who's now the Secretary General, and Henrietta Fore, who was the Executive Director of UNICEF. And it was a conversation that just began with the fact that UNICEF had already begun a project to map every school.
Right. Just when that was in 2019?
2019.
Okay.
Yeah. So in that conversation, it was, well, we should work together. And so the result of that initial discussion was a follow-up meeting where we then explored how could we work together as two different UN agencies with two very different cultures. I would also add two very different histories, but therefore also very complementary strengths. UNICEF, with its global presence in almost all countries of the world, with its focus on education and children. ITU as a technical agency, smaller, but with the technical expertise and the relationships with the ministries of ICT, et cetera. So in a way, it was a very complementary strengths. And we're very proud that, yes, indeed, that we still are working together after 5 years, because two UN agencies working together for a longer period of time is, I think, actually quite rare. I really attribute that to the leadership and the vision of our Secretary General and the UNICEF leadership. And so that's how the initiative began. Now, why schools? For ITU, GIGA is actually a universal connectivity initiative. And for those of you that are familiar with how infrastructure networks are built, what we have to do to make sure everyone gets access to connectivity is they have access to connectivity, but in a meaningful, affordable way. So there's a lot of statistics that talk about how 95% or some percentage in the 90s, people have coverage on their mobile phone. It might be 3G, it might be very slow, and it's probably very expensive. So that isn't sufficient. The only way to lower the cost...
Can I interrupt you? So when you say it is 90%, and you before mentioned 2.6 billion not being connected at all, so these 2.6 billion, you don't include them in the 90%, or they are already
what
just lower?
What it means is many of those 2.6 billion may actually have coverage on their mobile if they had a phone. They get a signal, and maybe it's a really slow signal, but they're not using the internet because it's probably, number one, affordability.
Right.
Because that cost of the data package is going to be, far higher than what they can afford. There's actually a benchmark that says for meaningful connectivity, a person who's using the connectivity should not have to spend more than 2% of their monthly income on connectivity, which is in Switzerland, we all pay 50, 100 francs a month for our high-speed broadband at home, and we're making whatever amount, so it's way under the 2%. But in the developing countries, it's actually quite often very high. So GIGA is about connecting every school with sufficient connectivity that then makes that connectivity serve as basically your backhaul or your backbone of a high-speed, reliable internet connection. And since schools are everywhere, there's around, we think, 6 to 7 million schools in the world, and they're in every part of a country. If you can connect the school, you can then use that school to connect the community, because the school can serve as a hub to then allow, for example, an entrepreneur in that village to create a Wi-Fi network and connect every home. So GIGA really is a
it's like a
core
spreader in a way,
a
positive spreader, if you can use that word.
And why not use the schools as your node? Because schools are everywhere, and I would say also no one can argue against giving school connectivity. So it's a very political, easy message. We just want to connect every school. So GIGA, by picking the school as the target, as the node that has to get connectivity, and we've even defined the performance speed, 20 megabyte per second. That's the target that defines that a school is properly connected. If we can do that for every school in the world, we basically solve this issue of the core network that needs to be in place that then can deliver affordable, meaningful connectivity to everybody.
How much is, like, just to get an idea of 20 megabits per second, so the minimal goal, is it the minimal goal? I understand.
So actually,
like how do we have, if we connect to at work, to the internet, how quick is that?
Okay, so I mean, you look at your home subscription, most of us, right?
Oh,
so we're paying, okay, so typically your home broadband probably is somewhere between 50 and 100 megabyte per second.
Oh, wow,
and,
okay.
You know, now they're talking about selling a gigabyte per second. So 20 megabyte per second, just to give an example, isn't enough for streaming video, with 5 classrooms in a school at one time and having interactive Zoom calls. You can't do that with 20. But what you can do with 20 megabyte per second, just to give a rough estimation, is you can probably have 4 to 5 classrooms using the internet as a tool to supplement a lesson plan. So maybe they're accessing something from some digital content and they're showing it through a PowerPoint presentation. So it's not the whole full interactive experience, but it's enough that if you're in a small rural school in a developing country, having internet to 4 to 5 classrooms at one time during the day is good. Yeah. And then at nighttime, that same 20 megabyte per second can serve a community of 30 to 40 households, and have decent. Of course, because
you have it 24 hours. Yeah. Oh,
so that's a bit of the thinking of the GIGA initiative. Is actually, like I said, it's an actual universal connectivity project. But we focus only on that connectivity to the school because that's the laser-like focus of the GIGA mission. It's very easy to understand, and it really is a focus that actually you need a public-private collaboration. So the reason why you pick a country in a developing world where not all the schools have fiber, let's say, connectivity, it's because it's too expensive and it's not profitable for the operator or the private sector. So that's what we're trying to solve. We're trying to create the models. So you kind of the
gap, you would then jump in. Okay.
And focusing on that, and then once you have that, there's tons of entrepreneurs and small, medium enterprises who then want to create a small business model in their community to give the connectivity. Yeah. And so we don't want to worry about those guys. And that's important. They're really important. And you have to have the right policy regulation framework in place. But we want to focus on that piece that it's very difficult for a single government or an operator to focus on.
Could you maybe, I think it might be helpful also for the colleagues online, that you could share like an example, like where it already worked, maybe starting also, like how did you choose X country, or how did you engage with the government, and like, what were like the different steps, if you could walk us through? I don't know if there's already one in place, because you're not that old as an initiative, but would there be any? So
we have, we have 34 countries that are currently countries where we have some kind of agreement with the government and GIGA to connect every school. Now,
so that's like the basic. You have an agreement between the government.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how a country becomes part of GIGA. Is there's an exchange of letters where the government is committing to the GIGA mission, and a lot of that involves, first of all, data sharing. So we need to know where the schools are. We need to also understand where the current infrastructure is. Where's the fiber? Where's the towers?
Of course.
So this mapping, and that actually defines the first. So there's a 4-step methodology to GIGA: map, model, finance, contract. So mapping starts with you can't do the connectivity if you don't know where the problems are. So we actually have a real-time maps called the GIGA Maps. You can go on the website and Google GIGA Maps, and they're real-time maps of of a country where we show where every school is, and we show whether it's green, yellow, or red, which means is it connected, partially connected, or not connected. So you pick a country like Sierra Leone, and you have almost all the red dots around the schools with a few green in the capital, because that's where there's some connectivity. Obviously. And so you can see this visualization, and that's, it starts with you can't address the problem if you don't know what the problem is. And so anyone can go on the internet, as I mentioned, and check Google Maps. We have mapped roughly 2.1 million schools out of the roughly 6 to 7 million schools in the world so far. Some of that is directly in partnership with the government, where we're actually using government data and we're triangulating that with our own machine learning tools. So one of the innovations in GIGA is that we're now using satellite imagery to identify a school. Because most central governments, we have found out, don't know where all the schools are in their country. Wow. And so we validate and we confirm the data points using machine learning satellite imagery. some of the maps are also created using open source data that's already out there. But around a third of the schools in the world we currently have mapped, and we want to track, are they connected or not? The model step then says, okay, let's now overlay that with the current infrastructure, the ICT infrastructure.
Yeah, that you get from the government.
You get it from the government.
You're right.
You can also get it, again, open source, or you can buy it, but we're trying to get it from the government.
Yeah.
And then you can start modeling what is the best solution to give the connectivity to every school, and how much will it cost? Okay,
so that's the model phase. Just for the audience, so do you mean, when you mean the best way is either through a cable or like a satellite? Or,
what's the best technological configuration? Maintaining, as the UN, neutrality and impartiality, so we're not promoting one technology over the other, but we want to, but we want to be able to give the government an idea of how much it might cost, or and what are the different options on the connectivity. It's actually giving also investors that information. So that then moves into financing contract, map model finance contract. Finance then says, okay, now that we know where the schools are, that we know how much it will cost to connect and what are the configurations, how can we now create some additional financing models that might attract people to invest
fund,
in this, right? So that relies on innovative development financing, like blended finance, creating a layer of concessional or grant financing, for example, so that the project becomes bankable. It also involves, one of the areas we're looking at is something like using innovative approaches, like we're calling it connectivity credits. So connectivity credits is applying the carbon markets to connectivity. Can you create a price unit of connectivity, like a gigabyte or a megabyte, and have that on the market, that if an entity gives connectivity to a remote area, they earn a credit. They earn credits based on that connectivity, and that credit can be used through a market platform to be traded for something else. So we're trying to create these...
so what would it be? Who would then earn them? For instance, like a company who would invest, they would then earn this credit, and they could probably tax deduct it, something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, we're testing these. That's just an example of the finance. And then finally, the contract. So contract means just applying basic procurement techniques like bulk purchasing, price transparency. We believe we can also lower the price of just connectivity, because as soon as you have more visibility on prices, then prices get lower. And
because it becomes more competitive? Or?
Well, people now know when they can shop around. And in fact, UNICEF is really driving that piece of work, and they're applying the same market principles as they do to vaccines. So the vaccine and Gavi, of course, was in a way game changed by, at least this is my version of history, this is what UNICEF tells me. UNICEF played a great role in introducing price transparency on vaccines, and that allowed the pricing of vaccines to go down significantly, which is currently now how the vaccination of children is really driven by a lot of that. Okay. So this map model finance contract is our methodology. GIGA itself won't be the one connecting the schools. We're the platform to allow enough information and visibility that we can then package and work with the government to package essentially an RFP, a request for proposal, to get a public-private or a private entity to do the connectivity.
So you're kind of a matchmaker in a way.
Matchmaker, and also, yes, we're a facilitator, but also active in uncovering the data and information that any investor would need to then decide to get involved. Yeah. It's all a matter of risk. It's a risk game. So every piece of data we uncover on how to connect the school in the country, you're removing an element of risk in some regards. And then you add on to that, ITU, one of our core strengths is on policy and regulation. So you also combine that with the right policy regulatory framework in a country that we hope to have an influence on with connecting every school, and then you even remove some additional risk that an investor would normally be looking at. Is it,
so I hear that, since you're kind of a matchmaker, I'm sorry, I just give you this, I think it helps me at least to understand it the best. The core importance is to have partnerships, if that's what I deduct from that. So who are your main partners? Is it more like governments? I'm sorry, not governance, governments, like the Swiss Foreign Ministry or the foreign ministries, or is it more like private sectors or philanthropies? Yeah. What would you say, in time, or also maybe based on maybe how you have had it so far, and also what would be your ideal partnerships?
Yeah. So And you asked also for an example, and I didn't answer that yet. So the core partner is first and foremost the government, and we need to be working closely with usually the Ministry of ICT, the Ministry of Education, hopefully the Ministry of Finance gets involved or other ministries, and also the ICT Regulatory Authority, which all countries also have, like the regulator, similar to what we have
like the Ofcom,
in Switzerland. So those agencies are critical and they need to be supporting GIGA. And then, of course, getting the connectivity to happen and also getting all the other pieces that need to be in place for the connectivity to be meaningful is about creating the space where others then can
jump in
on that platform. And just now to give you a concrete example, we have not in GIGA done an RFP to connect every school in one country yet. We've done a lot of pilot tests. So in Rwanda, for example, we did put together with the government an RFP to connect, I think it was 50 something schools, and it had to meet these following criteria, and it was for this amount of money. And we've done a lot of these pilots, and so the partners, quote unquote, that help implement that they're not really partners; they're actually suppliers, implementers.
Right, yeah.
So we do have a lot of entities who we do want to be part of the solution, and be bidding on solutions. That's part of the broader GIGA ecosystem.
Okay.
I would say finally, just on this idea of the partnership and how GIGA works, once you've got that platform and this mission of connecting every school in a country, you have created a space where the government can use that platform to bring other partners on board who are working on different parts of the challenge of making meaningful connectivity. So an example would be, we're not focusing at GIGA on content. So one of the first things people always ask us is, what's the content you're now creating for the classroom? We've chosen not to focus that on GIGA because there's a lot of NGOs, other organizations who do that.
Many free online courses on that. And academia meant.
And they can't do their work unless you have the connectivity. So that's an example of why not then in a country that as part of the GIGA platform, those kinds of entities, it could be a small medium enterprise as well, local content can be part of it, because then they can, take advantage of the connectivity when the connectivity happens. And that's how we're going to achieve the overall mission of connecting the schools, but making sure the connectivity is meaningful. You have to have the other players also involved. And so GIGA is very much about being a partnership platform as well.
What do you feel are like the biggest difficulties or challenges, or is there also a risk that you will not achieve your mission?
Well, I would say we got to get that first country RFP out and see if the market will respond. There's a reason why every school... Could you just
RFPOs
request
maybe?
For proposal. Sorry. There's a reason for why not every school is connected. It's because there's not a business model behind it. In fact, one of the biggest challenges, but that's any development project, is that there's if we're not going to rely 100% on just public financing, which most of the kids can't, and whether you're talking transport, water, energy, or ICT, the reason why those projects haven't happened is because they're not bankable, or they don't have a business model. There's not a return. So what we're trying to do on the digital side is create the conditions that then become attractive for an investor or a public-private consortium of sorts to then go ahead and bid to do that connectivity. That's really what GIGA is about. So I can't say GIGA won't achieve its mission until we can demonstrate we can do that. At least at a country level, or minimally a country level. Not a pilot, not a region, but a country. Or multiple countries. Because we actually think that some countries are really just always going to be very challenging, and it's only by pairing that with another country that together you then can make the business model work for that country.
Because the market becomes bigger for like the possible investor. Got it.
That's kind of what we're fixed on right now. We think, the only way we're going to do this is that you create a model that is attractive to bring in new investors. And this is where then that whole spectrum of different financial players is critical. That's why we're also working with the Swiss entities, including SDC and some of the funds that are being created, because the whole key to making this financing work is you have to have what is called blended finance.
Right.
So you have to have the different layers of financing, including at the very bottom, concessional or grant capital So a foundation or a philanthropy who's willing to put money in, that just serves as a first loss guarantee. So the other stacks become, again, if you're an investor, you're willing to take more risk because you have this level of concessional or grant funding as part of the package. So this is, again, very well known to most of the people that are following development finance, this blended finance model, and that's part of what we need to explore, how we can make that work with GIGA also.
How could you, because we're actually talking here to the colleagues in the field as well and in different embassies around the world, how could my colleagues be of help? What could they do, like the different embassies, for instance, or also the colleagues obviously in Bern? I mean, what would be of help to GIGA?
So part of our, and we haven't actually talked about this, Nina, but Switzerland, FDFA, is one of our supporters.
Yeah.
So we skipped a bit of history for GIGA, where we conceived it in 2019. In 2022, we received our first big, I would say, sovereign sponsor or donor, and that was FDFA. Yeah. And that was with the vision that Switzerland wanted to support the establishment of the GIGA headquarters in Geneva. We've since received some additional funds from the Spanish government, which has allowed us to establish a tech center in Barcelona. And we've now received it also with the Swiss government and the Canton of Geneva support, another big contribution from one of the Swiss foundations in Geneva, which has allowed us to not just create the headquarters of GIGA there, but also now what we're going to be opening next year, first quarter, the Geneva Konnektivität Center.
Okay.
And so here's for our audience in the field, I would say there's two things that we would love to do more of with Switzerland. First is we would love to go in all the countries where we're operating, 34 currently, or any country, work with your mission, with your ambassador, and hold a session to explain what GIGA is, and we would be happy, and we'd be happy to showcase the leadership that the Swiss have given us to allow this initiative, which we think is game-breaking, and convene that so that you can showcase to your stakeholders in that country. So we've done that. Actually, most recently, we met with the Algeria mission of the Swiss consulate to discuss. It wasn't a meeting with the broader stakeholder group. We've had your Consul General in Barcelona involved in some of our GIGA activities. I had the honor to go and spend time with Ambassador Baltz in San Francisco, the digital diplomacy tech playground, and we did a session with all the fellow missions. So I guess number one, please use us to showcase what Switzerland is doing on digital development and digital connectivity, and we're happy to co-host an event. Of course, not to mention the activities we already do with your missions in New York and Geneva. So I think that's first of all. Second of all is as we now get the centers going also in Geneva and Barcelona, both of those centers have a strong component of bringing governments to Barcelona or Geneva for training, for knowledge exchange. Right. So we're actually inviting typically the person in the Ministry of Education in one of our GIGA countries that's responsible for technology. We would bring, with a fellowship, so we would cover the costs, we would bring them to either Barcelona or Geneva for training, for exchanging ideas. So we would love our Swiss counterparts in the different fields to be also aware of that, so they can also promote to their counterpart in the ministry, hey, the GIGA Learning Hub, it's called the GIGA Learning Hub within the Geneva Center, is holding a workshop on school connectivity. I'm pleased to also let you know, follow up with an invitation for the person in the Ministry of the ICT or Ministry of Education to come. So we want to also be, bringing people to Geneva, and so that's an opportunity for us to work more closely with your colleagues.
I think it's a great idea, and I would be happy to also. I think we're gonna. I'm looking at the audience. We're also going to link it in the when we share the video with the colleagues. I think that might be the best. We'll also, if you allow us to also share your contacts, so if colleagues would like to organize an event.
I'll mention one more thing since you
please do, because
we're
already coming to.
So we've been talking about, for those of you in the field in Switzerland, part of the new GIGA Konnektivität Center is promoting the Swiss ecosystem and. That's both academic and private sector, and frankly, any Swiss institution. So we are going to be holding a lot of roundtables in Switzerland on GIGA. We did a roundtable at University of Zurich a year ago or 2 years ago. We're probably
already
overdue.
2 years.
We're due to do that again. But we're also going to be working and have a partnership with the University of Geneva, and we're going to do some research with them. But we want to have the new center in Geneva be a hub where we can do fellowships. So it could be a researcher, it could be maybe even a small, medium enterprise, an entrepreneur to have a space to help work together with us on school connectivity solutions and really promoting the Swiss ecosystem and their role in school connectivity. But I will say, since we come back to health centers, so I've been talking all about schools, but as those of you who have been following the UN Pact for the Future process that was endorsed in September and the Global Digital Compact, GIGA actually was called out as an example of an initiative to help connect every school and health center. So, you know, for us, health centers are equally all around the world, and they're just another dot on the map.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you connect a school, you can often connect the health center or vice versa.
Yeah.
So we are looking at how the GIGA methodology can be applied to health. And if you now introduce that, now you're opening up the ecosystem to the health ecosystem now as well. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities to engage the Swiss abroad as well as in Switzerland.
Thank you so much. It's fantastic also with the link on health. I think hopefully, and really good luck with that. I think it's equally important as schools, obviously, and maybe we could do another talk on that when you're a bit further away in this, far away, not further, far away in this development. Thank you so much, Alex. We usually do like a 30 minutes, so I think we already kind of come to an end. But I really hope, and I'm also looking to you, I really hope that you got a glimpse of this quite innovative approach. I feel that both you and UNICEF took like 5 years ago. I think it's fantastic, and I really hope that you have success in connecting and closing the digital gap of these 2.6 billion still unconnected people around the world. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for listening. Again, I hope that you will find ways to kind of promote GIGA as well in your places. And that you will connect with Alex or the other people from the GIGA team. And thank you so much, Alex. Thank you so much for listening. Just a note to you, we will have the next DIGI Talk. We'll go a bit away from the connectivity topics. We will go back a bit on cyber and mediation. And it will be in January. It will be on cyber mediation with Adam Cooper from Humanitarian Dialogue, HD. That you probably are also familiar. Thank you so much, and see you, and happy holidays, because it's the holidays between January and now. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.